And here was this huge airplane that a lot of people didn't see how it could get in the air just because it was so big and so heavy, you know. And there it was, flew beautifully, came back, landed beautifully, taxied in.
Okay, Jack, natural question is, what are your impressions?
Something that thing is just ridiculously easy to fly. It's just a pilot's dream.
That successful first flight marked the beginning of a rigorous and dangerous phase of the jet's development, flight testing. Testing was, and still is, an expensive process of controlled destruction. New jets are pushed to the absolute limits of their capacity in the air and on the ground. Generations of 747 test pilots pushed these jets from the days of the 100s to the 400s being manufactured today. Brian Weigel was current-day test pilot Joe McDonald's boss. He had this bit of advice for his employees.
Should be careful.
This blazing brake test is called a rejected takeoff. Pilots must accelerate at maximum weight, maximum speed, then stop dead just prior to takeoff. Then they must sit for 5 minutes, doing absolutely nothing, while a ground crew assesses the situation to simulate real-life conditions.
You destroy with each test, you completely destroy a set of wheels, tires, and brakes, which is worth, even in those days, tens of thousands of dollars.
Today, the same rejected takeoff test is done on the state-of-the-art carbon brakes on the 747-400. But a bad call on the ground crew's part is a bit more expensive.
Someone has to make a pretty critical call because the test costs, I think, on the order of about $1 million to do. You don't want to redo it if you don't have to.
The original 5 747s were put through the most rigorous testing program ever performed on a civilian jet.
This concludes the final flight certification report for the Model 747. Thank you all, Jim.
Less than a year after that Virgin flight, the first commercial Boeing 747 entered service for Pan Am in January of 1970, flying non-stop from New York to London. The 747 became a bestseller. The 747-200, a structurally stronger version of the 100, came out in 1970. Air Force One is a 200. The 747-300, with its stretched upper deck and capacity for yet 44 more passengers, debuted in 1982. As the 747 line evolved, the jet's makers boasted theirs was the biggest. Today, more than 15 million flights and 35 billion miles later, that's still true. Today's Boeing 747 is a brand new jet, a machine completely different from 747 number 1, the city of Everett, which now awaits restoration funding in a lot near Boeing Field in Seattle. Boeing kept this jet, RA-001, to use for testing. Its 4 brothers, the 4 other original test jets, are still operational. One was retrofitted as a cargo jet and flies to this day.
Well, it brings back a lot of memories. I think of the fellas that helped me work with it. A lot of them aren't here anymore. You know, it was 1966, 67, 68, a long time ago. I think they all should be proud of the job they did because this airplane is still the queen of the skies.
The 747-400s being built in Boeing's Everett plant today have exterior and interior innovations that simply didn't exist when the jet was first developed.
The 747-400 was a reaction to the airline's needs and a reaction to the fact that there was a lot of technology that we could add to the 747 that would improve its reliability
its maintainability, lowered its production cost. And it really was, if you think about it, a remake of the airplane from a system standpoint.
Today's jet is bigger, of course. This jet carries more passengers, weighs 140,000 more pounds, and flies 3,000 miles further than its predecessors. One of the most visible differences on the 747-400 are winglets. These composite and aluminum tips extend upward about 6 feet on the end of each wing, where they trap and utilize air that would otherwise bleed off the end of the wing.
They added to the efficiency of the wing, and they provide a little extra range by increasing the effective lift of the wing.
Also, thanks to the winglets, the 400 can squeeze into a standard-sized airport stall and still enjoy the benefits of a bigger wingspan. Mechanic Corey Stollup rarely gets called by his real name.
No, they call me the winglet guy, among other things.
Ironically, these high-tech NASA-developed composite and aluminum winglets are applied to the jet in a rather low-tech manner. At 140 pounds each, they're so light, it only takes a couple of helpers,
Thank you, gentlemen.
a lift,
Then beat it into place.
and a bright orange mallet to get the job done. Big changes took place inside the 747-400 as well, especially on the flight deck. Older 747s were flown by 3 crew members: pilot, co-pilot, and flight engineer.
This is Boeing 006 on HF2851.
But Boeing wanted a standardized cockpit, so flight crews could easily transition from one Boeing airplane to another.
Okay, we have a test pass.
The really huge change was to go from 3 flight crew members on the flight deck to 2. So we eliminated the position of the flight engineer.
Crews had to get used to the new cockpit's ability to do a lot of the tasks people once did. Computers on this jet could figure out the most efficient route, check tire pressure, even automatically land the jet. This is the original cockpit. Contrast that with the new look.
Thank you. Airplane tells us everything which is not normal.
Digital cathode ray instrument displays replaced dated electromechanical or steam gauges.
Mark.
And the 400s currently coming off the line are further improved with more reliable liquid crystal instrument displays. There were some numbers that went down when the 747-400 was developed. Flight crews on older 747s had to monitor 971 lights, gauges, and switches. That number now stands at a more sensible 365. Decibels went down as well. The 400 had newer, faster, more efficient engines that have to meet stricter noise regulations. And these quieter engines can now take this jumbo jet more than 8,000 miles non-stop. The changes most customers notice are interior features. They've come a long way, baby. Though doubtless some nostalgia buffs wouldn't mind going back to the days of spiral staircases and orange upholstery. Some completely revamped 747-400 interiors can accommodate a whopping 568 passengers.
This is the crew rest for our cabin crew.
Crew sleeping bunks were added behind the cockpit and above the ceiling in the tail section, since flights can last longer than 16 hours. New fire-resistant paneling was added, and an improvement near and dear to any traveler's heart. Bigger overhead stowage bins give the 400 more capacity per passenger than any other wide-bodied plane. Or if you check your luggage, the 747's handlers load more than 42 tons of baggage onto the jet in less than 7 minutes. When you see this gigantic jet swallowing 5.5 tons of food to feed hundreds of hungry passengers,